Okay, so now this was not on our original schedule, but this was something that came up in conversation. And so I asked John if he would be willing to come spend just a few minutes with us and talk about sunflower markets. What's going on with the availability of our sunflower markets, and yeah, just kind of give us a quick rundown. So I see that John is unmuted. You can turn on your camera and we are ready to go.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. I know as far as there's been some rumors floating around about the status of the crush plant in Goodland, and just unfortunately the rumors are true. The plant will be closing down. As far as I know, they're going to be accepting seed until March 5th. I just got that today. And I don't know exactly what the future of that plant will be. I'm sure that if ADM found a buyer, they would be willing to sell that plant. But, you know, as far as they are concerned, they will be shutting that plant down. But, you know, what I want to tell producers, there are alternatives in your market. One of those would be the Colorado Mills plant in Lamar, Colorado. I know that they're looking to expand their presence in Kansas. I know that they work with a lot of growers as far east as Lindsborg and Wichita. So it's one of those things that it's an opportunity if you're going to grow high oleic sunflower. Also, I know that other companies, for example, Red River, is looking at setting up a system, or I should say receiving stations and contracting for 2021 crop in Kansas. I don't think they have any concrete plans now, but I would assume that if something's going to happen, you will see that here in a very short time. The other thing that also I just want to make you aware of is that, you know, in Kansas and even in eastern Colorado, there are quite a few bird facilities that are buying bird food. Other than Red River and others. And the thing is, we do have a list on our website under the grower section that lists all the different elevators and co-ops in Kansas and in Colorado that do buy sunflower. And what our goal is going to be here at the office is we're going to get that updated to make sure that we have people who are going to be buying 2021 crop this fall. And just to make sure that producers have options to sell their crop this year. So other than that, you know, right now the demand for sunflower seed is very strong, especially in bird food and in on the crush side. And so just want to encourage everybody to, you know, consider planting sunflower yet here in 2021, because there will be market opportunities available to you. So if there were any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them. But it's other than that, I would just, like I said, thank you all.
If you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box, or actually, if you want to just unmute yourself, and we'll have John on with us for a little while. But if you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourselves and ask the questions.
Hey, John, Ron here. It would be helpful later on this year if we have locations of receiving stations and wherever the markets are.
Right, definitely. And that's one of the things we want to get that updated. And something that you could help me with, Ron, is I know that you guys collect checkoff, and obviously those are facilities that are buying seed. And, you know, what I could do is I'll send you the link that we have for Colorado facilities, and just see if you could match that up with who you're receiving checkoff from. And if we're missing somebody, we'd love to add them. So
yep, be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do the same thing with the Kansas Sunflower Commission. I've talked to Carl Esping about that also, and he's going to do the same thing. So,
John, this is Dan O'Brien. How is all the movement in the soybean complex, especially soy oil, how is that coming over and affecting the sunflower market?
Well, you know, right now it's been very positive for oil demand for us. You know, when you look at where old crop is at today and new crop, we're about $3.50 higher on old crop right now than when harvest started. And on new crop, we're about $2.50 higher. You know, and I know that even just with bird feeding, with the COVID situation, we've seen a lot more demand in bird food. You know, right now, a lot of people are stuck at home and they're looking for things to do. And it's really been a nice boost for us. And, you know, normally, you know, this year our crop, we were up 50% increase in seed production in the US. And normally you'd see depressed prices, especially right after harvest. And, you know, we came into this year with really low stocks, which was very positive. And then also just the demand is keeping the prices where they're at. And obviously what's happening in the soy complex is sunflowers competing for acres. And so you're definitely seeing an increase, and that's why.
Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts, comments?
I don't see any questions in the chat box. So John will hang with us for a little while here. If you guys are a little bashful and don't want to unmute yourselves to ask questions, please just go ahead and put them in the chat box or email them to me, and I'll get them to John and have him get an answer for you. Even if that's, I'll get it emailed back to you, or we'll have him come back on and answer this here in just a few minutes then. So.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, John, for answering those questions, because I know that I was getting those as we were advertising this sunflower webinar. So thank you for that. Okay, so our next presenter today is Dan O'Brien. And so Dan O'Brien is with Kansas State University. He is actually in my office here on the K-State Experiment Station in Colby. Dan is our ag economist. And so I asked him if he would be willing to come and just talk to us or talk us through some sunflower budgets. And I asked him, we actually sat down and kind of went through some sunflower budgets, talked about some of the nuances of what we were seeing. And so I asked Dan to go through and kind of give us kind of an overview of what all we needed to be thinking about with our sunflower budgets. I also have a handout for Dan's presentation. It is posted on the K-State Sunflower District Agronomy website, which is where you went on and registered, but I'll put the link back here in the chat box so you guys can go in and pull that up if you want to, as we're going through this conversation and take notes on that. So Dan, I think we're all set with you.
Okay, Jeannie, I'll go ahead and share that screen then. Okay, here we go. Okay, do you see a budget there?
Sure do.
Okay, let me get it over so I can get all straightened out here. Well, I appreciate the chance to speak with you. And I think that the budget that you have in front of you is center pivot irrigated oil sunflowers. And the way I'd anticipate this going is that first I'd show you the overall budget in terms of how we've set it up, et cetera. And then come back through first for center pivot oil type flowers, then for center pivot irrigated confections, and then for non-irrigated oil types, non-irrigated confections. So we have a series of factors to consider here, and we have both printed budgets and a budget generator on the KSU Ag Manager website, www.agmanager.info, and those budgets are under the Farm Management Guide crop budget section. So let me talk you through this, and this is meant to. Well, actually, let me first kind of lay this out. Then Jeannie, Ron, anybody will take input and to see where we're at. And note that the budgets that you have in hand are before this meeting, because we're as new technologies come along, new herbicides, different seeding rates, better yield potential. Our budgets, they may need to change. So anyway, we wanted to bring that out. So here we go. Let's take a look at this. Okay, here I want to do something real quick. Give us some more space to work with. All right. So looks like you're probably seeing on the right-hand side of your screen, on the left-hand side of your screen, that budget. We'll move with this. So probably the first thing to look at under irrigation, there are two things. First, it's the yield. And especially in these high plains areas with either limited water or irrigation control regimes, or management regimes, that we're wondering about the amount of water we're applying to these. So, Jeannie, I think we were going to work together on that. So here you see, and I think you can see my cursor, can't you? I believe you can. There you see for yield levels of 2,000 pounds per acre, 2,600 and 3,200. We've got that as I don't want to say low, medium, and high, because what they're geared to is the amount of water you're applying. So that 2,000 might be pretty good if you're limited water. So here we've got both yields and the amount of irrigation water that we're assuming is applied. So Jeannie, you had some questions you wanted to ask? Do I stop sharing? You come in with yours?
I can just share over the top of what you have here. Give me just a second here.
Okay.
Okay, guys, we're going to go back to poll everywhere. Okay, so Dan asked me to put together some questions to help spur some of our interaction. So are these yield levels that he just discussed okay for our discussion today? To do 2,000, 2,600 pound and 3,200 pound flowers. And this does not look right. So this, I don't know what's going on with poll everywhere today, because this just does not seem to be working well. Here we go. Okay. We have one that's, or at least some that are saying yes. Okay. Okay. Dan, is this enough for us to go forward?
I think so. I see no violent red reactions on the no side. So
okay.
What I would say to add in on context, go ahead and type in on the chat to go ahead with this too if you see anything. So really then thank you, Jean, for putting this in, because as I was telling her, this is the most important slide we've got right now. You know, is 8 inches of irrigation water enough to get 2,000? Is 10 inches of irrigation water enough to get 2,600 pounds? Is 12 inches enough to get 3,200? And I'd even ask, maybe put down in the chat. I put in kind of have asked, well, is it enough? Is it, you know, do you maybe in the chat tell us, are we overwatering? Can you get 20? Can you get 3,200 with 10? That's what I wonder if well managed. So I'd value your feedback on that, because whatever we do on these budgets, we don't want to, you know, over represent your expenses on it. So far we haven't had any feedback on. So we'll go with 8, 10, and 12. And note in this Lima up here in northwest Kansas, you have 11 inches per year on average for 55 inches over 5 years. So what you see here, 10, 11 is well within bounds. So okay,
Dan,
Jeannie,
you can share your screen again.
Okay, that sounds good. So we're going to go with that then. Okay, so here we got. So we're going to. And note that when we're basically charging, let me get to the right spot, along in here, irrigation water inches, we're charging the cost of an estimate of natural gas. Now we put this together in November. So natural gas market's been hopping around since then, with the cold has been a part of that down in Texas. But kind of assuming what we'd have going forward by the time markets settle down again, that's kind of what we're assuming. So then, you kind of start going through this. Now, I put a price, pulled off the USDA report. This is the current cash price, not a forward bid, but assuming current cash price for oil types would be down the road about what they are now. And according to what John had said earlier, not a bad assumption. In fact, may be low. But anyway, at Goodland on Friday, $18.75 per hundredweight. So we got that. So then I also put, and Jeannie, Ron, I admit I got this from the latest 3-year average that we had on our yield trials out of K-State. Now those trials are dated. They were, at least what I found, is like 2017. But for yields in these regions, put in about 46% oil. And frankly, John went to your website and used that calculator to figure out what the premium was. So anyway, 46% oil at these yields. Value any feedback. If we don't hear anything, we'll keep going. But if that's too low, too high, let us know. Just give a minute for that feedback.
Hey Dan, Ron here. So the $2.25, is that a per acre unit?
Well, good question. Now I just figured that. I think that's per. Good point.
Maybe per pound.
It'd be per pound.
Yep, that's the premium, I'll bet, per pound. Okay.
Well, can you help me quick on a fast calculation as to what I should have on there instead of that 225? Because I put it in per acre, and that's obviously not right. So
I'll do some quick work here.
Okay, if you do that, then we'll keep going and tell us when you got it. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So then, and what you see here, these three different yield areas. They're not, well, if you get good weather, you get 32. If you get poor weather, you get 2,000. No, we're trying to adjust seeding rates, fertility rates, and actually even quality of land costs. Well, and quality of land kind of driven by how much water you have available for this budget. So we've got those three different levels, and we're gonna move down below. I'm gonna take a look at seed first.
Hey, Dan,
cost. Yeah.
I just did the calculation. Yeah, that's on a per pound. That's the per pound premium for 46% oil.
Okay. Per pound. Do you have those numbers?
So the 1875 jumps up to 1920.
Ron, that
that
should be per 100 instead of per pound.
Yep, that's right, per 100. So the figure is correct, Dan.
What I have there, the 225.
Yes, per 100 weight.
Well, sometimes as the economist, it's better to be lucky than good, because well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And thank you, John, because we did get that off. Yeah. Went to that was you have some great resources on the National Sunflower Association website. And that's where we got that. So thank you. So anyway, there you go. And just note, without that, let's look at the average. If you just put that to 0, it takes a little bit. That's per 100 weight, right?
Correct.
Okay, so my 225, I'm still not right, am I? So 225 times, and that's per 100 weight, so that would be times 20. Isn't that correct? Because when I go to 0 here, it only changes it $2 per acre. So let's see here.
It works out to a 12% price premium at 46% oil.
Okay. So is the 225 still the way to look at that?
You should, Ron, this Cameron. Hey, you should add the 225 to the 1875. You should come out with $21 per 100, and then take that times your yield. Should
just
get you
just make it 21.
Right. That, I mean, if you figure in that premium would be 225, which is right, but it would be added to that 1875. Yeah. And yeah,
there we go.
That's what the premium would be, the way I figure it. So,
well, that looks considerably better than the way I had it. So, and thank you, Cameron.
Yep.
Well, that already right there, I was really under, well, that makes a big difference on the bottom line. So let's keep going.
On that high yield, let's remove the 225.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. Any more thoughts on that? Note, we don't have any government payments, which frankly, for all of our 2020 enterprises, we had substantial MFP payments and others. So, but we're going forward assuming that those things aren't there, and we're no insurance indemnity payments. We're assuming, we're not assuming a crop loss that would bring that into play. So we're just doing good old basic planning. So let's keep moving forward. Cost per acre. So for 2,000, 2,600, 3,200, I'm going to go right down here to the seed area, and this is where agronomists wonder about letting economists get into their realm. So Ron, Jeannie, others. So I put in 19.5 pounds. Well, excuse me, 19.5 thousand seeds per acre times $1.68 per pound of seed per 1,000, and at that middle 19.5. 1,000 units. And then for the high side, 22,000 seeds per acre at the 168, and then on the low side, 17 for the 168. Now, a lot of times in these types of discussions, when I've been around this, I'll see not necessarily see people aiming at the middle side and having the bottom being about the same as that, but then raise the top. There's kind of a non-symmetrical approach. But here's Jeannie, Ron, the floor. What do you see as a good amount of seed and a price to put in for oil type sunflowers?
I think those populations are in the ballpark.
Hey, Dan, further east, we would go higher populations even on dry land than that. But we're a lot of times at 28,000 on our irrigated flowers. But it's hard to send an arrow and hit the whole part of the state on this deal.
Well, what we can do is if you give us feedback, you've got Jeannie's, Ron's, my emails, we kind of accumulate those adjustments, send it to us, and we'll redo this. We can reform a budget to fit where you're at, particularly with a lot higher plant populations. So that, Jeannie, I'd offer that as a caveat for them if that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And Cameron, tell me again, I have a ballpark idea where you're at, but I don't know if everybody else on here knows you. You're down.
Yeah, around Hutchinson, Reno County.
Yep, Hutchinson, Reno County. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's our next thing then. Once we get done with this, again, these budgets are aimed at the northwestern part of Kansas. Would probably represent Colorado some and up into Nebraska and Wyoming. But we'll come back and with the right numbers and fit this to your situation, Cameron.
Okay.
Dan, are we also going to do a dryland budget?
Yeah, that's next. In fact,
Okay.
You see down here at the bottom, we've got Western Kansas irrigated sunflowers, and as time allows, we also have a non-irrigated budget for both, oil types and confections. So
Right.
we thought we'd go through the irrigated part first, and
Nope, that sounds good.
and then we debated about the crop fertility, and on our center pivot situation, we've got anhydrous ammonia. At least that's what we had in our budgets with the consulting with our KSU agronomists, and you can see well, Jeannie, so I don't misstate something, can you tell me how best to interpret this? This is pounds of N, isn't it?
Yes, that's pounds of N put on as anhydrous ammonia. As Dan and I were talking through this, I have a fair number of guys who will do some strip till on some irrigated pivots in order to get some anhydrous down or get some fertility in place. And so that's kind of where we started down this path. So yes, this is actual pounds of N as anhydrous. So 82%.
And the prices I basically got from our local fertilizer supplier this morning, that 30 cents per pound of N on anhydrous. So that's a little higher than we talked about the other day, Jeannie, but went ahead and made the change. And liquid N, now we didn't have any on this. It will come in on the non-irrigated budget. We'll get to that here in a minute. But MAP, monoammonium phosphate, I came in, the price they gave me for that was about 75 cents a pound. There's another product called MEZ, which shows what I don't know, 12, 40, 10, that's at 80 cents a pound. And those are some of the fertilizer products that have really jumped in price here of late. Price for phosphate, 75. Yeah, well, there you go. I can't jump ahead of myself. For the 3200, it was 40 cents, but for the phosphorus carrying products, 75 and 80. So Jeannie, you and I kind of settled on 12, 15, 17 and a half. Jeannie, Ron, anybody else? Are we still in the ballpark here?
We settled on those numbers based on medium phos soil sample or a soil test, and that's based on the recommendations that we have in the K-State or in the High Plains Sunflower Production Guide. So we tried to hit kind of in the middle of the road. So medium testing soils for phosphorus.
I'm going to jump up. Go ahead.
Jeannie and Dan, this is Carl. I've had trouble getting in. Sorry for the delay. There's been extensive research done up in North and South Dakota through the NSA concerning the actual usage and importance of phosphorus in sunflowers. And I think, Jeannie, we've talked about that at High Plains meeting some. But I quit using phosphorus a number of years ago. As long as you have a medium test soil like you were quoting, I haven't had an NP lately. Not to upset the fruit basket, just making a comment. Does Cameron, do you have any thoughts on that?
We typically don't use any on double crop, but we still do put some down as a starter only on the full season.
I agree.
And, you know, when we stop and talk about FOSS applications, we have to remember that FOSS is not something that moves easily in the soil. And so many times if your FOSS levels are in pretty good shape, you may have very low recommendations for FOSS on the sunflower side of things. I just pulled up the High Plains Sunflower Production Guide. And so for 2,000 pound flowers and a medium soil test, the recommendation, if you're applying it in a band, would be like 12.5 pounds P2O5 to put in there.
Well, this is no small thing in that, you know, at 75 cents a pound, 12 pounds at 3/4, that's $9 an acre. And at 15, what's 3/4 of that? Is that, have to get my calculator out. That's 10, 11, something like that. And, you know, more like 12, 13. So, interesting. What's the consensus, Ron, Jeannie? Should we go forth with where we're at and just I would say we go forth with where we're at, but keep in mind, and then if you get a bottom line, then come back, we'll take it out and see what the impact is.
Yeah, I like that. This is overestimating expenses, and that's fine, and we can come back and cut back later.
Right.
Yeah, the new recommendations are suggesting that there may or may not be a response to phosphorus levels if the soil tests are okay.
Yeah, well, interesting. Well, thank you. I did not. I've learned something new. I did not know that research was bringing into question where phosphorus was at on.
Yeah, it's newer information.
Huh. Well, let's just see something. Okay, so you see really what we're after is this line right here. Total cost for 100 weight. And well, we're going to make other changes. We're not through this yet, but 22 per 100 weight for the 2,000, and that's because you're fixed. You don't have as many units, you know, 100 weights to spread your fixed costs over. When you move this way, you know, your costs don't change that much in terms of the direct cost, but for the center pivot system, et cetera, again, your fixed cost is, you don't have as much fixed cost diversion or dispersion. And then over here, so I'm going to go in and just let's just do this just real quick to see what this does. Okay, so for 2206, you take that out. The total cost per 100 weight goes down some. There. Oh, we gotta go here. Yeah, so it helps, that's for sure, in terms of the total cost per 100 weight. Let's bring it in and we'll do that again at the very end. Okay, let's see if I can undo what I've just done. Okay. I think it was 12, 15, and 17.5. Okay, we'll come back at that later. And in eastern central Kansas, are you in areas where you're worried about phosphorus yet, or is that farther east of you? I mean, potassium?
Our potassium levels here in South Central Kansas have all been pretty good so far.
Okay, you're not worried about any application or lime or anything. Okay.
Well, we do some liming, but we don't. The potash numbers are pretty good still. So.
Okay.
Here at Salina, potassium levels are good. This is Jay.
Good.
This is
Well, let's
Gary,
get it. Yeah.
and I'm from eastern part of Kansas, around the Junction City, Manhattan area. And we have potassium levels there, but they're starting to show up a little bit on our results there that we need just a little bit of potassium now. But
Okay.
that's just in spots.
in our Eastern Kansas crop production budgets, we do have, we're starting to show, we show some potassium and lime, and you're kind of getting into a soil testing philosophy issue. and Jeannie, so I'll state that, then I'll throw that hand grenade in your deal, or you might just say, well, let's move on quick. So
But Ron Meyer come up. Yes.
well, let's
Sorry, I'm trying to get unmuted here. So I think especially potassium is something that we need to keep an eye on and watch your levels to see what they are doing. Just like Gary mentioned, is that there, a history of soil sampling, I think, is very important. And so once we see like a downward trend in some of your numbers, if you haven't been putting that nutrient on, especially when we think about potassium, and actually phosphorus the same way, that's the key, that we maybe need to change some of our management of what we're doing going forward. But I think it's important to keep an eye on it. And I think that's really showing the case for a long soil testing history, so you can keep an eye on those levels.
Well, let's move on. Jeannie, do we just hop into this, or do you have a question before we look at herbicides?
Well, since our pool everywhere seems to be struggling a little bit today, why don't we just jump on in? I think our group seems to be fairly willing to give us some input as we're going here.
Sounds good.
The kind of slides we were going to be asking is, what do you think that as we have for these numbers for herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, if those numbers were correct, or if they need to be higher or lower? So I'm just ask you guys to just jump in or put it in the chat box if you think we're on about where we need to be, or if we need to be higher or need to be lower. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, so we do have again, the tillage system here is we're planting with strip till, and the anhydrous is applied to strip tillage, and we have one herbicide application, I hope I've got that right, and a couple insecticide applications aerially applied. So with that being what we're after, then our herbicide program, at least we had put in, and any omissions here comes out of the Ag Econ department and not from the agronomy. We don't have any burn down herbicides listed, but we do have a pre-emergent and a post-emergent listed. You can see those dollar amounts, about $29, $30 pre-emerge, about $18, $19 post-emergence. And you can also see the insecticides there. One Lorsban, a couple warrior treatments. When you look at that, are we in the ballpark? Are we hitting the type of plant cultural practices and the costs that we ought to as we put together this budget?
Okay, I saw somebody, Jason commented in, as we were talking about moving to strip till. So when Dan and I first started with this budget, it actually was completely tillage plus a little bit. And so we did not have a burn down herbicide in there. We probably need to add a burn down herbicide in.
Okay.
No till, or if it's strip till.
Give me a number. I see a need a $15 burn down. Is that what I was seeing in that comment?
Jason, can you unmute and tell us what you're thinking?
It depends on what you burn down with. I mean, you're going to do it be anywhere from 12 to 18 bucks. I used on mine personally last year. I used a Panther with some dicamba and meso 35 days out, and had really good control for the most part. But that was about with application, it was 21. So you're looking about $15 a chemical.
Okay. And there'll be a spray. We'll have another a herbicide application.
Correct.
I had post-emerge there to make that 2. Okay. There you go. See where that's not affecting us too much on the cost. Still really reasonable costs looking there. I don't want to just rush ahead, because that would But anything else in herbicides?
You know, as I look at the herbicide program, and Vipan's going to talk to us here after at the end of this webinar today about herbicide, what's going on with herbicides. You know, many times we hope that a good burn down and then a good pre-emergence package will be enough to carry us through the season. However, a post-emergence application may be necessary, especially if we're going to clean up something like some grass or something along those lines, or if we would happen to have something that would open up that canopy and we have another flush of palm or amaranth or something that comes through. So that's part of the reason we had that post-emergence herbicide on there, because we hopefully don't want to have it, but sometimes it's a good idea to have it in the budget just in case we do need it.
And we are using sunflowers to clean up some corn messes too. So you're probably going to have that post spray for volunteer corn.
Exactly what I was thinking, and what Jason is referring to for everyone who's not right here in Northwest Kansas is that we've had some problems with a lot of ears off at harvest, and so a fair amount of volunteer corn showing up and being around. And so yes, we are using this broadleaf crop of sunflowers to come back in and have a chance to take that volunteer corn out.
So I'm just ornery enough to say, so shouldn't that be on the corn budget? Well, no, let's just move on. So, but honestly, if it's carryover, and it is within the system, but you are showing extra costs on the sunflower budget because of a problem you're inheriting out of another part of the cropping system. But
oh, but Dan, isn't that all what crop production is we're inheriting problems and trying to fix them at the next crop?
Moving along. Okay.
We already took the hit. We didn't get paid for that corn on the ground.
Oh, there you go. Good point. Let's take a look at the. We're getting to not too far from where we go back up and look at the numbers and then shift over quick and see the other budgets. You see the insecticides. We got what we had written down was a treatment of Lorsban and a couple treatments of Warrior. And that per acre number, that's per treatment for the two Warriors of $297 per acre, and then application on top of that. Is that square with what you all are thinking?
You know, if I'm thinking about insecticide applications, I would hope that we wouldn't have quite as much of this on the oil type, but for sure on the confection side of things, where we're really trying to manage our insects a little bit more. Jay, I see you're unmuted. What's your thoughts?
Well, in talking to Jeff Whitworth this last year, you really got to scout for that one in general. I would agree with the confectionery situation as being more critical, but lately back here, we haven't had the, knock on wood, we haven't had the insect pressure. So I would encourage you to scout it. I don't have a problem putting it into a budget, but scouting is critical, I would say.
So what you're saying, Jeannie and Jay, is maybe back here, maybe we don't need, on the confection budget, I hopped over there. We do have all of this on the confection budget. Perhaps we only need one on the oil type for the Warrior. Is that what you're kind of saying? I guess we'll leave it there for now. But when you go to the confection one, you'll see that we've got this same program on the confection. So maybe we might be over applying here on the oils.
Hey Dan,
I see you're unmuted there.
Ron here. I like overestimating expenses slightly, like we're doing here.
Okay.
And Cameron, I see you're unmuted also.
Yeah, I was just going to echo the thought of scouting is pretty critical, because we didn't spray. We had close to 1,000 acres this year, and we didn't spray at all for any moth control this year. So it was a blessing. But as far as the budget goes, yeah, you probably better plan on it.
Yeah, it's what's in the typical year is
Right.
in recent experience. Well, let's take a look down to here, and you can see our tillage thing. We used custom rates now there to represent our tillage and spray operations planting. We have this new budget that shows that's based on machinery replacement, and Jeannie and I looked at that, cranked the numbers, and then we got a hard lesson in how if you really fully account for full economic cost on machinery replacement, it's a fearsome economic burden. So, but we put in new machinery costs, you know, and we do nobody any favors, but the costs on this are at least probably 25% lower than they'd be. So we're custom rates, X amount percent lower than that full cost that you get. So we're using custom rates, and just a thought, if you wonder about what your machinery costs are, then this other tool is it's a good worthwhile thing to look at. But anyway, you can see, yeah, what Jeannie and I changed out of was a chisel disc field cultivate scenario into strip till and planting with a whole bunch of attachments on, a whole bunch of things done for planting, and no liquid on this. We see 2 herbicide applications now with the pre-emergence involved. A couple of aerial applications, and the aerial applications, $8 an acre. So, you know, with the product that we've got, and well, that looks like about $6 an acre plus so $6 to $23 an acre of expense. And like the fellow, someone had just said, what a blessing not to have to pay that. But that's kind of what we've got in there for aerial application of insecticides. And just that's a custom harvest rate. The latest number, $42.50 base charge. Nothing for extra yields, at least with what we saw out of our custom rates. The hauling rate is kind of a re-engineered number to match up with, basically used other oil seed, used the canola number and recalculated the poundage to get that as 0.00492 per pound. And we got some, now the goal in this budget is to have this be equal with other crops you compare it to. So I put, so I'm just going with direct costs, and not, if you're hiring labor, you want to put that in for $15 an hour. Well, that makes a big difference. But for now, we're figuring it at 0 and figuring all the crops you're making a decision off of. And we can argue pretty strenuously about land charges. So again, if we're saying if water land quality is lower in 2000, what you should aim for in a piece of land, then that's say $90 an acre cash rent, $100 for 2,600, $110 for 3,200. Now the top land in Sherman County, Goodland, Kansas, what was listed in 2019, the top irrigated land, you know, full water, etc. Jeannie, that number was $135 an acre. So we're kind of overtly and deliberately saying that this thing fits really well on land where we're not. Well, it's got 2 scenarios on land that maybe we don't have as, you know, as the surety of water may not be there, et cetera, although we are putting 10 inches on, or in these water management regimes, you might have all the water you want, but you get out to years 4 and 5, you may have used it up. So we're when we go valuing land now, we've got those factors to consider. I think if you head back to the east, whether irrigated or not is probably an issue in the central part of the state. But any argument on the 90, 100, 110? And really the thing to do is set up a deal like this, and then if you want returns to land, put a 0 there, or, you know, just what's the return to land, and you go with that. And we've got irrigation systems. These are new systems, new costs. I think that's a $91,000 center pivot, and cost you, well, more than that to actually put a well pump gear head in, a power unit, 7-year life, etc. So let's go back up here and see what we got. By the time we've done all this, what we're after was this number right here, because then you can take and you can look at prices, you can figure out what to do. So with these yields, we were more than covering costs at 2,632, and in the ballpark down $42 at the 2,000. So, and we talked about doing this, putting zeros in for that phosphorus thing, because that's you get research-based comment. You do that, you basically there's $8 an acre that you saved, and at 3,200 you're making some money. Jeannie, I'm going to move on quickly, you guys, and just show you these other budgets so you can see them. And these are pretty. I know we have Mike and others here from the confection world, so I don't want to short that. So you can see the yields. 1900 basically took the 3 scenarios for oils and just took 100 bushel per acre off of that. Now with good hybrids, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but had done that, and then I went ahead and used 65% large, 35% small. And if you have 80% large, this number is way too low, and if you have 50% large, it's way too high. But 65, 35 at $21 an acre. Those of you that are strong into the confection world, is that basically it's 14.5 small, 24.5 large. It's just a matter of how you weight them. What's your comment on the yields and the price?
Dan, this is Mike. Those prices should be quite a bit higher.
Okay.
Right now, I would say that the average price would be about $28.
28. Okay. For both that. Okay. I was looking off a USDA report, and I must have. I'm going to throw the USDA report under the bus, Mike. Sorry about that. No.
Oh, we all want to throw it under the bus.
Well, 28 makes a big difference. And
yes.
what's your mix of large and small?
32-22 right now. And
really?
at 60%, it would figure 28 cents.
Yeah, I was using Mike. Well, thank you for clarifying that, because John, if he's still on, that explains what I'd seen before on the 1450, 2450 didn't seem like a tremendous bid, but it would make more sense that the 3222 would be the reality given what's happening in the soybean market. So thank you, Mike. Sorry, yes. I apologize for that. I just wasn't looking at the right place. So that makes a big difference. And let's just show you quickly here. You can see the assumptions on for these levels: 1,900, 2,500, 3,100 pounds. You can see the amount of seed we have and the cost of $1.87. Those of you involved in this, are we in the ballpark?
Seed price should be a little bit higher. That seed typically runs around this year around $275 a thousand.
Thank you. Okay. There you go. Quantity is okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks, Mike. When okay. If the yields are right, the anhydrous amount just is basically we're using the same type of calibration. Well, you can see what we had done there. 65, Jeannie, I think 65 pounds times the yield divided by 1,000 times 0.82 is, so that's a calculation. Got the same issues in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say that's how we got those numbers.
And liquid N and the phosphorus amount, the same issue we were looking at before. Now we do have a burn down herbicide on this one. Yeah, we had 50, maybe we're low. We had 15 on the other by the time we adjusted it. Should we go 15 here also?
Yeah, I think so.
Could be about the same thing. Pre-emergence, post-emergence. And there's that insecticide program as we were talking about, and same amount of water applied. Down in here, I think need to add another herbicide. Pass. All right. Harvest. Did the same things with the interest rates and with the land charges, etc. So I don't want to just race through this. here we are. Well, this is a tremendous return, you know, and makes a big difference between $21 and $28 per hundredweight. At 21, we were still covering for the middle and higher, but at 28, you know, those are tremendous returns all across the board. So yeah, you got this amount of revenue versus this amount of cost, and you're making some money. Now, when you look at that, you know, that's a tremendous return. Any comments on that? Does that make sense?
I would just comment on the insect side of things when we're thinking about confections. You know, we're not just looking at sunflower moths, that we're also looking at seed weevil. And so we have to be, as Jay and Cameron both mentioned about the scouting part, you know, we have to be a little more involved and a little bit more. We're looking for more than just head moths when we're thinking about the confection side of things. So we need to keep that in mind as we're going through on that line item.
So we're not so much being cautious on the insecticide number on this. You know, it's probably the reality, and maybe we're even low. Probably, I don't know if we'd say we're low, but
it all depends on how many fly in.
Right. Well, so we have these two situations, and you know, you're making enough there that to cut back on the phosphorus to save $8 an acre is worthwhile, but really you're showing a profitable deal there. Jeannie, I'm really taking up more time than I should have. I just hopped over here to the dry land, and maybe the issue to look at here is our yields. And again, this is a Western Kansas centric deal. I'd really be curious what in Eastern Kansas with more rainfall, what you're seeing. But for low, medium, and high yield potential land, again, 1,300, 1,700, 2,100. That would be for the oil types. And to add in, you hop over here to the confections. And this is maybe where people would have consternation. Get this over here. That on the confections, 1,150, 1,450, and 1,750. How do you respond to that? I see a comment from Jason, 1,600, 2,024 on dry land, and that's oil types, Jason? Okay, if that be the case, then we'd be pretty low. Jeannie, Ron, what do you think?
Kind of depends on the year.
You know, I always think about building a budget thinking on the positive side of things. So with Ron, that it is, you know, I want to have high yields, but I'm also a little pessimistic on that. So I struggle with where we should be on yield levels. I don't disagree on the 16, 2,000, 2,400 necessarily either, but I do know that we've had some where we would be super excited to get 1,300 pound flowers in some cases. So
and maybe the way to look at this is the 2,100 catches the average of Jason of what you're kind of talking about. You know, so it's in the that average of 2,000, the top end. If anything, we're in the ballpark for that. So that's maybe a caveat I'd have back. Okay, so let's just take a look at this, and you see we made pretty similar assumptions on seed. I struggled on the fertilizer thing and basically sent a note to Jeannie and Ron this week and said, look, I basically guesstimated on that. Do we have anything better on the liquid? And surprisingly, apparently I was in the ballpark. So for liquid in at 100, 120, 140, but I'm willing to take input, that's for sure. And you got the same phosphorus issue that we had before. So let's just, hearing no other comments, let's move on with that. Again, pretty similar burn. We do have a burn down herbicide, post-emergence, pre-emergence there. We have same insecticide program with only one warrior application, no water applied. Again, no-till plant, liquid Liquid fertilizer, I wonder if I've got enough. If there's a post-emergence, I think I need to have a pre-emergence in there too, don't I? Okay, better add that in. Okay, and then base charge, the land rents 40, 45, 50. Sometimes they've been higher. After this year, after the prices we have, they probably are going to be higher. But those seem to be decent numbers for our part of the world. Too high for Southwest Kansas. So you come back here with admittedly a pretty quick view of it, and there you go. You've got. I mean, for me, for so many years we've seen budgets with nothing positive, just crucifying them, and here we've got average and as some would say, pretty conservative yields. Showing, on non-irrigated with that we're covering costs pretty well. So odd to see that what I probably am not doing here is not knocking down the land cost enough. If we only get 1,300 pounds, it probably needs to be $35 an acre instead of 40 or something. So it probably reveals that I'm not handling one of those cost items. And for non-irrigated confections, one thing we do need to do, as Mike had mentioned, we need to change the seed price. That's for sure. So this is $2.75. And you can see burn down herbicides, insecticides. You got one more shot about half the time. 0.5 means half the years we're doing a warrior, another treatment. And then coming in here doing a number of things. Again, I think I'm a little low on this again. Okay. And you come through with all of that. There's that land issue. Like I say, that's causing problems. We're showing on confections. Oh, well, and my price is wrong. Mike, as you'd mentioned, what was that price again? Was that 28? I think
yes,
that was
28.
28 makes a big difference on this budget. So then you're making money on dry land, but there's more yield risk. That would be the caveat on it. So that was pretty quick on the dry land ones. Ron, Jeannie, Ron, anybody, what are your thoughts on these budgets? And I'd view them not as a finalized thing, but where do we need to go on them?
So I like the strategy. We're conservative on yield. We've got costs in there, and then look at the big picture, see what it looks like. Because if any one of those costs or yields travels in the opposite direction, then it could brighten the picture here. But I like the approach.
When we take budgets to lenders, I think they'll appreciate good, reasonable numbers. I think so. And you can have better numbers, but you have to prove it, no doubt. And many probably have.
Dan, can you tell us where, for anybody who's wanting to sit down with numbers like these or these budgets, where can they go and find them? What kind of tools do we have at K-State? I'm sure several other universities around us also have these types of budgets. I did put in the comment box the link to the custom rates survey that we have with K-State, and I have many farmers who call and ask me of what our custom rate numbers are, and the reason for putting that in there is so you can have some accountability on your crop budgets with that. So if you're curious, that is in the chat box. And then, okay, Dan, here's our farm management guides.
Yes, so I'm going to make a change here and hope it follows. Okay, agmanager.info. If you go to the agmanager.info, you look at the web address there, you'll find our general ag manager website. This is out of Kansas State University. Now, other universities also have very good ones. I saw a comment. Oklahoma State has a very good budget generator also. But when we go to farm budgets, projected crop budgets, and in this we have this for 2021 non-irrigated, 2021 irrigated, and livestock. So let's go to non-irrigated. We spent so much time earlier, and we do have a whole bunch of non-irrigated crop choices, and there is here under sunflowers and oil type and confection a set of budgets for Southwest, Northwest, North Central, Northeast. So we do have those out to the west. Confections, we have those out to we have the west and central, the confections out to the east, and we have double crop sunflowers also. And that's more of an central and eastern phenomena. We do have a K-State budget generator, and that would be for I would call that the graduate school of crop budgets. You can dig into that and to fine tune your own budgets and to really know what machinery costs are. That would be a way to go. It's downloadable. You can download it and work with it, and we'd help you through it. We've got some instructional things there too to help a person. Jeannie, so that's where you'd go in the KSU system to find our budget stuff.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Dan? You can unmute yourself and ask, or put them in the chat box over here. You know, when Dan and I were talking about this session, when I asked him to start talking through some of these things, it was very interesting because he goes, well, we should make this interactive and have everybody talk through what they're seeing. And so, you know, doing that is a little scary to stop and think through, because sometimes discussion gets away from us and things like that. But mostly we wanted to show you that these numbers are all changeable, and we do have some resources on the K-State side to help you find out what some of those numbers should be. At the same time, these are all customizable for you guys to put your own numbers in. And I sit down with these crop budgets, and actually I did a sunflower budget not too long ago for a gentleman. So these are customizable things for you guys to be able to use. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box, or just unmute yourself and ask Dan.
I'll save this, what we've got here. I'll put them into PDFs. So Jeannie, if someone would like them later, we can follow up with what we just came up with.
Okay. And I will put those PDFs on the Sunflower District Agronomy website, the same place that you went on and registered to attend this. So.
And I need to talk to Mike to make sure I'm getting the right source of confection prices. So we'll do that.
Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in. I don't see anything in the chat box. Dan's always available for us to email questions to and everything to follow up. So, and if you guys start working through that, the farm budget generator, if you need help, Dan's a great resource for that. And it's a pretty new tool also. So if you find some bugs, let us know on that too. So, okay, thank you, Dan, for everything, for going through those crop budgets with us today. And I think he must be already all shut off here. So, okay, so we're going to switch gears just a little bit here. Dan, are you back? Are you back?
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie. I overstayed my welcome, so I was trying to not go any longer. So anyway.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so next up we have John Nowatzski from NDSU. And one of the questions that I get from growers is, what about combine fires? And so I asked Ron Meyer, who should we have to come do this presentation? And John was the one who I guess said yes, and was our first thought about getting this topic discussed. So John, are you ready to roll on your side of things?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
I really do think every time we go to switch slides and do all of this, we need like Jeopardy music in the background to put the pressure on a little bit more.
Well, first of all, certainly very impressive discussion of sunflower budgets. Very good. I just introduced myself. I am an extension specialist at North Dakota State University, focusing on agricultural machinery. And we at our university in extension do not have a safety specialist. We used to, but we don't anymore. So each of us contribute to safety in our area. And on this one, it's going to be on preventing combine fires. And if ever there was a presentation that doesn't work very well on online and remote, it would be this one. This one certainly should have been, or would be much better if we could do it in person, standing beside a combine and walking around it. But we'll do the best we can. What I'm going to do is focus on 3 areas: fire prevention, cleanliness, and then fire control. And Jeannie, I think you have this publication, Crop Harvest Fire Prevention Checklist, available, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have it posted on the website, but I'll put the link in the chat box right now.
Okay. You know, I think as we go through this, those of you who are actively involved in farming, there is probably nothing that I'll say that you don't already know. There's nothing new here, but it's important. We all know it's important in terms of safety to just review this with ourselves on a regular basis. And if you have employees, people on your farm that are hired to work there, this is something that they need to go through. And I would suggest that this publication, it's just a 2-page checklist, front and back of one sheet, would be something that, you know, you should print off. There's PDFs available, and share it with whoever was working with you. So really, in terms of, you know, like I say, 3 areas. The first one is fire prevention. And a lot of it is easier said than done. And certainly that's true of the first one. You know, parking vehicles in place where there's minimal vegetation, preferably where it's tilled, because the exhaust system on pickups and trucks is hot enough on a hot vehicle to ignite, certainly to ignite sunflower dust, but to ignite any of the dry vegetation. So try to avoid parking, and that's something, again, as I go through this, it's going to be very quick. As I go through this, think in terms of what you do yourself and what you would tell the people that are working for you. Preventing fires in the field too. Obviously, if you have leaks in the fuel system, they need to be repaired or replaced because the hot exhaust system is certainly hot enough to ignite sunflower dust. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But anytime there's any damage, it needs to be replaced. And another thing is to avoid refueling, both with the engine running and with a hot engine. Again, difficult, but if you have to refuel in the field, it's just wise to turn the engine off and wait, you know, have a cup of coffee, whatever, wait a while before you fill that fuel, because any kind of a spark that ignites is serious. And I'm not sure, it would be interesting to know what your experiences are with fires, particularly with sunflowers. You know, most of the fires that I see here in the Northern Plains and in North Dakota related to sunflowers have to do with drying sunflowers after harvest, and we frequently have to do that. The other thing is to make sure you have fire extinguishers that are in good shape and they're kept up to date. So one in the cab and one on the ground, and one in you know, whatever the grain cart or the truck, the pickup that you're using. So have fire extinguishers that are available, and they should be, you know, there's a place to record, make sure they're inspected on a regular basis, and then take them off and shake them regularly. Making sure that if you have one that has a gauge on, that it has, it's in the green zone. Make sure that you have type B fire extinguishers. If you're going to be dealing around fuel, and you frequently would be on a piece of equipment that has fire. Make sure that everything is in good shape, and replace it if it's partially used, and replace it if it's damaged or has leaks. And again, you know, it's so easy to ignore this, thinking that, well, I haven't used it in the last 5 years, I'm not going to use it now. But it's really, really important to keep that in mind, that when you need it, you want it, and you want it to work. Again, as I said, check the dates for how old they are, if they've been checked, and then invert them and shake them on a regular basis, at least on an annual basis. Another thing is to keep the combine around the exhaust system, around the engine in particular, clean. And we're recommending that you actually have a dust blower and blow off that on a regular basis. Now, the finer sunflower dust gets, and the drier it is, the more likely it is to be able to catch on fire. And again, remember that the exhaust system in itself is warm enough, so if there's dust from sunflowers, again, focusing on sunflowers, building up where there is an exhaust system, it can easily catch on fire. This just shows a person with a leaf blower blowing out that area, and most of them have are rechargeable batteries, or you'd want to have one with a rechargeable battery and be able to recharge it on a regular basis out in the field, in your truck or in your pickup. Obviously, you can do it too with an air compressor. This is a little bit handier. Another thing that if there's any chaff or straw or grass, whatever, building up around bearings and shafts, to keep that clean. And again, the drier it is, the more combustible these sunflower dust can be. So very important to keep the dust off your equipment. Again, clean that area under the cab as well as around the engine. So keep those areas clean, and you know, again, a leaf blower works well. And then, you know, kind of in a kind of a summary, I'll probably get done here faster, but that's okay. We have a little bit shorter time. If you have a fire, turn off the engine and get out of the cab as fast as you can. And I think the other thing in this one is again very important. Call 911. We tend to think, when we have a fire like this, I think we tend to think, you know, I can get it out. If I work on it quickly, I can get it out. But always, that's a mistake. Call 911. If it's out when they come, that's great. But call first and get people to come there. Finally, on controlling fires, this is something that fire people frequently talk about. When using a fire extinguisher, just remember this acronym PASS. You know, pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze and sweep. Another thing that I did not mention is that, and again, something to share with your employees, if you have a fuel fire, generally speaking, spraying with water makes it worse because it spreads the fuel out and just spreads the fire out. So make sure that you use the right kind of fire control equipment. And again, type B extinguishers is what you want. And remember that you can do things that will prevent fires, that'll help prevent fires, by where you put your equipment and keeping it clean, especially keeping the exhaust system clean. And then remember the fire control. And finally, this publication is available. You can access it on the web, as Jeannie said, and you can also download that and have copies of it available for in your equipment. So, you know, it's been quick. As I said, it would be so much better if we could be in person and demonstrating this. We could also demonstrate how quickly sunflower dust can catch on fire. But so keep in mind, that prevention is what you can do. So I don't know, any questions? There we go. Jeannie?
As folks are unmuting and getting their questions in the chat box. So one of the things that I was thinking about was the different colors of fire extinguishers. Many times you'll see like a silver one on the side of the combine, a bigger canister that's silver. Are those water canisters, and should those be used at all? Or should we only be using the type B fire extinguisher?
Well, I think you can use them both, just as assuming that there's no fuel on fire, you can use the water.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, someone mentioned grounding chains. I think they are important. You know, dragging a chain with the combine so that it takes the electricity down to the ground. Static electricity that's created as you're moving the machine. So that's a good point. I should have mentioned that.
Hey, John, Ron Meyer here. I've seen extinguishers on machines and they tend to sit there for a few years or longer. Is there a common recommendation? Should we replace or have them checked out yearly or every 3 or 4 years?
Well, they should be checked yearly. And then that's where you know, and where do you check them? Well, you just take them through the local fire department. And so if they say they're okay, they're okay. But to answer your question, I think, you know, they're certainly usable for more than a year, but I would hesitate to say how long.
On the grounding chains, I had somebody had emailed me this question ahead of time. How long should the chain be? Does that make a difference? And how many should they have on the combine? Where should they hang them from? Just he was kind of just asking, just ballpark, what if type of things for grounding chains.
Well, first of all, you only need one.
Okay.
So, you know, that takes care of that. And I would put like a 10-foot chain on. The key is it's got to be touching the ground. And but you know, you don't want a 3-foot or 4-foot. It's got to be so it's dragging, and you don't want it too far behind, so you somehow or another would you know, get in trouble with moving driving on it or something. But no, just one chain is sufficient.
Great.
I did some checking on some of the area where the people who had signed up here, where you're from, and I see wherever you are, there tends to be a lot of irrigation. That seems to be something common to most of your registered participants.
You know, everybody else who was on this list probably doesn't have that option to look through to see who all has been registered, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. All across the High Plains area up into the Dakotas, we have folks registered, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska. I'm trying to think. We had a couple from California, or one from California and a couple from overseas. So this really is rounding out a big area of folks. I don't know if they've all had the experience though, when you smell the combine, you smell fire when you're combining flowers, it sure puts a little jump in your step to get going, because I've had that smell and it sure makes me move a little bit quicker and get on the phone a little faster of getting help coming for sure. So
it would have been good to have the pole everywhere working and see what kind of experience people have had with fires. By the way, I tried the pole everywhere too, and I got the same restriction. I couldn't get in.
Okay, I don't know. Honestly, it was working good for me about noon today. So I don't know what I've clicked on a box that's not making it work.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and an impressive seminar, webinar here.
Well, thank you, John, for joining us on all of this and for talking through combine fires for us. If anybody else has any other questions, I think John will be on with us for just a little while longer. You can send him a private message on our chat here or send it out for everybody on that. So thank you so much, John, for doing this for us today. Okay, I see there's one other question. Will this recording be available? Yes, the recording will be available. It'll take us or take me a little bit of time. It will have to do whatever magically happens. It will spool and get processed, and then the link will come back to me, and then I will have it up on our YouTube channel, and I'll have a link to it, and then I'll send that link out to everybody who's registered for the school today. So yes, the recording will be available. Okay, with that, we're moving on through our schedule here. So our last topic of discussion is weed control, because when we're talking through how challenging combine fires and other things can be, weed control is probably the thing I have most questions on. And honestly, that's what I've probably been part of the most research with. And so Vipan Kumar is our K-State weed scientist at Hayes. And I asked Vipan to come on and talk about some of our research, not just that I've been part of, but just in general, some weed control research. And then just kind of so that we have the whole picture of what we can do to get weeds under control in sunflowers. So Vipan, are you there and unmuted? Saw he was on earlier.
Hey, Jeannie.
Yes, Vipan, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm good to go.
Yes, you are good to go. Oh, look at all of that kochia in the background. Or is that Palmer amaranth, or is it both?
It's a kochia.
Okay.
All right.
Honestly, I think all of us weed scientists, I don't have it up today, but I have one that is just solid Palmer amaranth in my background. So we must have a liking of our weeds to get to talk about them. So
you can see the slides, Jeannie?
Yes, I can see slides.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining me for the sunflower webinar, and thanks for waiting the last presentation. I hope I'll not take too much of your time, but we'll like to cover some of the things we have been doing in Western Kansas and in High Plains region in terms of weed control in sunflower. So the title I made it for today's presentation is Weed Control Challenges. I think there are more challenges than solutions for weeds in sunflower production. And like to throw some my thought process and opinions, and like to take feedback from you guys in terms of future weed control research in the region. So in terms of sunflower productions, I looked at some of the figures from the last year's survey with the USDA NAS in June 2020. It was about 1.4 million acres total acres under sunflower production in US, and the major productions are happening in Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota, and the production in High Plains regions is Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, and northern Texas, and even some production in California. So if you talk about, or we talk about the High Plains sunflower productions, so two key weed species come to mind is kochia and Palmer amaranth. Those are the most problematic weed species we can think of in not only in sunflower, but in other crop production systems in the region. Why, one of the aspects why these two weed species are most problematic in sunflower is in sunflower productions, we are limited with herbicide options. We do not have many options in terms of controlling both kochia and Palmer amaranth, or in general weed control. So if we look at the options or the herbicide options in sunflower, there's, I think, one of the crop we have like very short list, very short list of herbicide. This is all we have in terms of labeled herbicides for sunflower productions, and you mostly see group 2s in Beyond, Express, SG, those group 2 tolerant sunflower we can go as a post applications. And then we had group 3, group 8, some of the products like Treflan, Sonalan, Prowl, or pendimethalin. And for the pre-programs, we have mainly group 14 and 15 herbicides, things like Dual, Zidua, or Spartan-based programs that is labeled and has efficacy on weed control. So among these small list of herbicides, we have even those group 3 and group 8 herbicides. They need soil incorporation. So they need to incorporate it into the soil. And as you know, in high plains, most of the folks, they go with the no-till sunflower production. So that incorporation or mixing into the soil is always a little challenging, and have been faded out, and in place, folks have been using more and more pre-herbicides in place. So with removing those PPI or pre-plant incorporated products, we have even a smaller or shorter list of herbicides labeled in sunflower. So this is all we have in terms of options or herbicide options in sunflower for weed control. Okay, poll questions. One of my first question to all of you is, what is your effective herbicide program for weed control in sunflower? You can respond to this question by going to the poll onto the website pollev.com/KSU. So let's see what you have been using in terms of weed control in sunflower.
So Vipan, we actually have to open up the poll EV.
Yes, we have to go to the website pollev.com/KSU and then enter your response.
Okay, so we cannot text in our questions on this.
No, I don't think this will work in text.
Although you probably want us to have more than just a one-word answer on this.
Yes.
Okay.
I like to see what folks have been using in sunflower as their standard programs or effective program. Go to the website www.pollev.com/KSU and then enter your response. Okay, Spartan, Pre, Dual. Those are good options. I think most effective options.
There's a comment in the chat box that says heavy doses of Treflan pre-plant incorporated.
Pre-plant incorporated, okay. Dual, Spartan, Broadex, Zidua. Okay, Sonalan, okay. Select.
So just so you know how these Wordles work, guys, is the more of us who type in Spartan, that's the bigger the word that it gets. So that means that more of us are using Spartan than maybe what we're seeing for Sonalan.
Right, that means more of the folks been using Spartan or polling Spartan as one of their effective program. Okay, Dual is getting there. Okay, select Prowl. Okay. All right, we don't have many options. These are all main options. But I like to see if folks have still been using some of those pre-planned incorporated materials like Prowl and Sonalan. Okay, I think we are stabilized with the results, poll results. So these are Spartan looks like the major product folks been using, and then Dual, and then followed by Zidua and Broadex. Like those are all good options to go with the selective or effective pre-programs in sunflower. Good, thank you. So let's move on to some of the the things we have just talked about, two key weed species that always challenge our sunflower production. First one is Kochia, and the second one is Palmer amaranth. Kochia has historically been in the plains, and Palmer amaranth over the last decade or two has become more established and more problematic in the regions, and really become challenge from management standpoint, not only in sunflower, but all other cropping systems we have in plains. So in both species, we have documented cases of multiple resistance, and this is one of the concerning area with both species, Kochia and Palmer amaranth. We have in Kansas a documented case of 4-way or 5-way resistance to Kochia, or to multiple site of action in a single line of Kochia in western Kansas. A Kochia line from Garden City area has been documented with resistance to glyphosate, ALS inhibitors, PS2 inhibitors, things like atrazine, and even dicamba or group 4 herbicide. Similarly, Palmer amaranth, we have a documented case of a single Palmer amaranth from South Central Kansas with the resistance to glyphosate, chlorsulfuron, atrazine, mesotrione, and 2,4-D. So multiple resistance in these two species are making challenging for controlling these herbicide-resistant Palmer as well as Kochia populations. Most of you know probably this slide. Have been presenting this in multiple presentations. This is one of the earlier reports on glyphosate-resistant Kochia reported by Dr. Stallman in 2007. That was the first case in United States. And you see on the left, on the top corner, this is a picture being one of the first field in north part of Colby, where Phil found a field with Kochia surviving a 2 or 3 application of Roundup in a soybean field. So this is one of the earlier pictures taken by Phil, he shared with me. And then since then, we have been seeing multiple cases of glyphosate-resistant Kochia, not only in Kansas, but you can see throughout the Great Plains. About 10 United States and 3 Canadian prairies, they have reported cases of glyphosate-resistant Kochia across the Great Plains. So in 2018 and 2019, because we know Kochia has been found resistant to glyphosate, we started a screening or a survey and screening project looking at Kochia population in western Kansas, western Oklahoma, and northern parts of Texas. That's the geography where Kochia has not been screened for or not been tested for a herbicide resistance pattern. So we initiated this project in collaboration with folks, my colleagues in Oklahoma State, as well as Texas A&M University. So we collected Kochia like live plants, as well as matured seeds from different scenarios, from different crops in fall of 2018 and 19. And we brought those seeds back in a greenhouse here in Hayes, and started screening process. So these are a list of populations we collected in western Kansas, and different scenarios. As I mentioned, we had wheat stubbles, fallows, corn stubble, and some of these fields, like wheat stubbles, they were also going to sunflower production in the following year as well. So in terms of screening work we had initiated in Hayes, we grow those populations, Kochia population in germination trays. You see the picture here. This is a 50 cell trays. Each tray had 50 seedlings. You can see Kochia growing them. And then when they were like 3 to 4 inch tall, we sprayed each those trays with different herbicides like Roundup, Clean, Clarity, Storane, as well as Atrax. These are the commonly used chemistries in our systems or in our cropping system. And we wanted to see the field use rate, the response of these populations to field use rates of these chemistries, how they they respond in terms of their sensitivity or resistance. So 21 days after a treatment, we did spray those seedlings in our spray chamber in a greenhouse conditions. And 21 days after treatment, we collected dead and live counts from each tray, how many of these seedlings die and how many they survived. And based on those dead and live count, we were able to calculate the survival frequency for each population. So this graph shows the survival frequency of 29 populations, 17 populations from Kansas, and 4 to 5 population from Oklahoma, and then 5 to 6 population from Texas we screened so far. And as you see, this is for glean herbicides at 21 days after treatment. And if we look at 20% survival frequency as a cutoff value, we can see that majority of those populations, they were above 20% survival frequency. Each population had more than 20% survivals with the glean sprayed at 21 days after treatment. And this is not surprising. Majority of the populations in the Great Plains are resistant to group 2s or chlorsulfuron herbicide, as we see here in this slide. Response to Roundup or Power Max or glyphosate, similar kind of scenario we observed, except 2 or 3 population in Texas. A majority of the rest of the population we screened from Kansas or Oklahoma and even some Texas population, those population had more than 20% survival frequency to Roundup. So that tells that resistance to glyphosate has been widespread in this geography as well in kochia populations. In terms of dicamba, almost half of these populations, they showed more than 20% survival frequency. So that's a concerning. Dicamba has been used more and more after glyphosate resistance to control these glyphosate resistant kochia, but we have been seeing more and more tolerance to dicamba as well in recent years. Starane, which is another group 4 herbicide, fluroxypyr, and comparatively, only Texas population showed more than 20% survival frequency, and there were 2 or 3 population from Kansas had more than 20% survival frequency to Starane. So majority of the population were controlled with the Starane from Kansas or Western Kansas. Atrex, which is atrazine applied post, and we had surprising results here compared to Roundup. Atrazine post was working pretty effectively in majority of our Kansas population, but we had survival frequency or survivals in Texas and as well as Oklahoma population. So post-applied Atrex were able to control those Roundup resistant kochia. That was quite surprising to me. So here is a picture showing one of the population from Western Kansas, the response to 5 different chemistries, as I mentioned earlier. So this is a Roundup. You can see those seedlings are surviving in the trays. Clarity, which is dicamba, glean, and Starane Ultra. And this is a post-applied atrazine. This was like a response we used to see with the Roundup like 10, 15 years ago. But now Roundup is like that and atrazine is working as opposed. In addition to those cases, we have also found recently or documented a recent case from Garden City with the resistance to 6 different herbicide chemistries like Roundup, Clarity, Starane, Glean, Atrex, and even Sencor now, which is a metribuzin, which is another PS2 inhibitors we use in our system. So things are getting more and more complicated in terms of resistance evolution, and that makes these weeds more problematic and more difficult to control with the available chemistries we have in our production systems. Moving on to our second major weed species we struggle with is the Palmer amaranth. Most of you know about this. It's called pigweed. It's one of the pigweed family member. And just like kochia, most of the traits, most of the characteristics match with the kochia. And one of the things is Palmer amaranth is a late emerging species compared to kochia. but it has extended period of emergence. Throughout the season, we keep seeing palmer amaranth whenever we see some rainfall on the ground. And palmer is also very aggressively growing. If the conditions are right, high temperatures, enough soil moistures, it can grow like an inch per day. And it becomes very, very difficult to spray or, apply those herbicide chemistries at the right time, at the right stage, controlling those seedlings when palmer is growing aggressively. And it produces a lot of seeds. A single female plant is able to produce more than 500,000 seed. And it also, cross-pollinate. It can exchange genetic material. It can, exchange the resistance genes from field to field or even within a field from plant to plant. So those traits make palmer amaranth is highly challenging and prone to develop herbicide resistance. So similar to Kochia survey work, I just presented small results here. We have been leading a project looking at palmer amaranth survey work in Western Kansas, as well as in neighboring states, looking at the resistance pattern in those populations. This is a project being started with by Dr. Phil Stallman, my predecessor, and I've been continuing looking at the response of these palmer amaranth in our areas to different herbicide chemistries. So since 2014 to 2020, we have almost 200 populations from 30 different counties in western and central part of the state. And we've been evaluating or looking at the response of those populations to those chemistries, the commonly used chemistries in our systems. Not going to go to too much details on the screening work, but I really like to emphasize or want to tell that we have a documented case of multiple resistance in palmer amaranth. We have 3 different populations, one from Barton County, one from Pratt, and one from Kiowa County. We have found 4 to 5 way resistance in single population. In Barton County, we found a palmer amaranth resistant to 2,4-D, glyphosate, glean, Atrax, as well as Callistos, and these are the level of resistance 3-fold or 12-fold compared to the susceptible population. So as again, just like Kochia, palmer amaranth or multiple resistant palmer amaranth has become a challenge for the producers in the regions. And this is a picture showing a palmer amaranth seedling surviving 18 fluid ounce. This is the field use rate of 2,4-D, what we use in our tank mixtures for burn down. And this population from Barton County has survived and producing seed heads in our greenhouse. So these reports have been documented, and we know that for the fact that we have multiple resistant palmer amaranth in the state of Kansas. But recently, last week, actually, we ended up with our Wheat Science Society of America meeting, and there is a new confirmation of palmer amaranth with the resistance to Liberty or glufosinate. On the right side, you can see a population from Arkansas has shown resistance to glufosinate, which is a group 10 herbicide. And this is the first global case of glufosinate resistance in a broadleaf species. And similarly, from University of Tennessee's Dr. Larry Steckel, he has confirmed dicamba resistant palmer amaranth. So these reports just showed up last summer, last year. So things are getting more and more challenging in neighboring states as well for in terms of resistance or multiple resistance in palmer amaranth. Okay, my next poll question is, based on your experience, which one of the following wheat species is the most difficult to control for you guys in high plains sunflower productions? Kochia, first option, second is palmer, third is both, and the fourth is none of the above. Okay. 56% of both, 33% palmer amaranth, and 11% kochia. Okay. All right, things look stabilized now, and I will go with this, I think, poll. It's pretty good estimate, 56%. Both species are most problematic, and 33% palmer amaranth and 11% kochia. This is what I have been hearing from folks in other webinars and crop meetings throughout the winters, and that seems the case in terms of controlling palmer and kochia. Okay, moving on to some of the work we have been doing, or we have done over the 3 years with the support from National Sunflower Associations, looking at the influence of moisture or the rainfall on pre and post soil residual herbicides. And this is a joint project being led by Dr. Nevin Lawrence and Cody Creech from University of Nebraska. And we have been part of it, me, myself, and Jeannie, doing the 2 sites here in Kansas, one in Hayes and Colby. So going to share some of the results. Most of you probably have seen these results in the NSA forum meeting, but I like to emphasize some of the things we have found in the project again. So in terms of a project background, Dr. Stallman and co-workers have previously found that single application of Rodex or Spartan lead can provide season-long kochia control and can provide 96% control of palmer amaranth up to 4 weeks. So this is known. This research has been done in Western Kansas, been reported, and we wanted to know, however, the longevity and the activity of this premix is influenced by the moisture. So, and another thing happened over the last 3 years was it changes in the label of Zidua, because Zidua become available for post application. We can apply Zidua as an early post, following those pre-applied herbicides. So our idea was to look at pre-applied standard programs of Rodex or Spartan Elite and then come up with Zidua as a post. And if we can extend that residual activity of those programs for the season-long control of kochia and palmer amaranth and other weed species in sunflower. As I mentioned here, these are our standard programs we've been using in sunflower. Dual, Zidua, Spartan AIM, and Spartan Charge or Authority Supreme is another premix. Another one has come got a supplemental label is Anthem Flex now. And those are again Group 14 and 15 premixes, and then products. With the focus on palmer amaranth and kochia, so if we have these chemistries upfront as a pre, and if we apply Zidua as a post, can that extend the pre-activity or residual activity from those programs for controlling these species? And what is the influence of the moisture and the environment, dry land versus irrigated environment in the sunflower? So those were the key questions we wanted to address in this project. So here is a list of programs we investigated, and there are 3 set of programs: Prowl-based programs, and then products, as well as Spartan Charge programs. And then we had standalone programs of Prowl, standalone program of products, and then Spartan Charge. And then we had follow-up programs, followed by Zidua post at 2 weeks, and Zidua post at 4 and 6 weeks, and similarly set of treatments for products as well as Spartan Charge. And then we had hand-weeded check and non-treated check in those treatments. So this is the treatment list we had in the first year, 2018, based on the temporal spacing in terms of emergence of those sunflowers, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. However, later years, 2019 and 20, we decided to go with the growth stage of sunflower for the application of Zidua at 2 true leaf, 4 true leaf, and 6 true leaf of sunflower, rather going 2, 4, and 6 weeks after emergence. So those were the changes we made in 19 and 20. And some locations also reduced the population of sunflower population to have some of those kochia and palmer amaranth in those plots. So those were the changes we made in the last 2 years, 2019 and 2020. So here is the 5 locations we conducted this study: Hayes, as well as Akron and Sydney, Akron, Colorado, and Sydney, Nebraska. Those were the dryland locations. And then we had irrigated location, Colby and Scottsbluff, 2 sites over the 3 years. In 2018, Sydney didn't have sufficient weed density. Akron had low weed density, just like Sydney. And in Hayes, we could not establish this trial. So 3 dryland locations was kind of, we could not get much of the data from dryland locations in 2018. 2019, Sydney, Julesburg, and Colby didn't have sufficient weed density. So we always had some challenges with this project. Either the weed density didn't show up, or weeds were not showing up, or we had trouble planting or establishing sunflower plots. And sometimes we got hailed out at the end of the season. So not all the locations we got everything or all the data set. But in 2020 also, just like you see here, no Colorado location and Colby location didn't have sufficient weed density. So some of those locations we eliminated from our data set. And you're gonna see some of the data set we are presenting just for a few locations where we got some good data. So moving on to some results, this is a Hayes 2019. As I said, 2018 was not established because of the rainfall events and some other challenges. So this is 2019, and this is the weed densities per row, including kochia and palmer. And this is a non-treated check. You can see somewhere between 7 to 10 plants per row that was under non-treated check. But whenever we had the pre-programs, either Prowl or Broadex or Spartan, they were able to reduce the kochia and palmer amaranth density compared to non-treated check. But if you compare among the programs, all the Broadex-based program, pre-alone or pre-followed by Zidua post at 2, 4, and 6 weeks after emergence, or 2, 4, and 6 true leaf stage of sunflower, they were able to reduce the kochia and palmer amaranth density to 0. However, there was no significant difference among these programs. If we analyze the data statistically, there was no significant difference. In 2020, again in Hayes location, you can see this is again percent control data. This is not density data, and we had kochia, palmer amaranth, and redwood bigweed in our plots in 2020. And then if you see, these are the Broadex-based programs, Broadex itself, and then followed by Zidua 2 true leaf and 4 and 6 true leaf stage. Compared to the Prowl-based programs, and Broadex-based programs had a little more control in those 3 weed species. And but overall, among the programs, we did not see any statistical difference in terms of percent control. Weed biomass, again, similar kind of story we saw. There's a lot of variability among those programs, and we did not see much of a difference or statistical difference among the programs, even from weed-free or non-treated weedy check in terms of weed biomass or total weed biomass. And same was the case in yield. No significant difference we found among the programs in terms of sunflower yield. This is just a little weather data we had. I'm trying to show here, like when we planted our sunflower, we planted sunflower around middle of June, I think June 17th, when we planted in 2019, and June 15th in 2020. So we had like a rainfall events before those planting dates, like less than ½ an inch and about 0.7 inch. In 2019, we had sufficient rainfall or sufficient moisture in the ground to make those pre-programs active. And after planting and after spraying those chemistries, we had some moisture or rainfall events to incorporate those chemistries into the ground. So it's not like it was a dry land, but we had good moistures to start with those programs. Some pictures here. This is a non-treated plot in 2019. You can see a kochia on the back and some Palmer amaranth growing in the rows. And here is the products by itself, no Zidua treatment. It looks pretty clean plot 2 months after applications. And this is spot and charge followed by Zidua early post treatment. We still see some scapes here and there of Palmer amaranth in some of the rows. Moving on to the another site, Sydney in 2020. This is a pigweed, mainly one species there. And just like Hayes location, we did not see much of the difference among the herbicide program. However, there was a reduced density of pigweeds when you compare with the non-treated weedy check. There was a significant decline or reduction in weed density when we had herbicide program in place, but no difference, statistical difference among the programs. Here is the yield data, and just like similar to Hayes, there was no significant difference we observed. There was a lot of variability also, just like Hayes, and no difference, statistical difference among the programs in terms of sunflower yield. So let's summarize these, what we had for the dryland side. Hayes 2019, we did not see any statistical difference, but products seems to be doing better compared to Prowl. 2020, no difference in wheat biomass between treatments and no difference in grain sunflower yield. Sydney location was similar story there. Total wheat density was decreased when there was a herbicide program, but no difference or statistical difference in terms of yield among those programs. This is a Colby site, which we had only one site, 1 year, 2018 data, and this is the Palmer amaranth density per row. You can see again, all the programs reduce the density of Palmer amaranth compared to non-treated weedy check. Compared to Hayes, it has a lot of Palmer amaranth. If you see the non-treated weedy check, around 150 plants per row of Palmer amaranth. But all the programs reduce the density compared to non-treated check. However, there was no difference among these programs, and you can see these error bars was quite wider. That tells there was a lot of variability among the plots. So no difference in density and no difference in yield for those programs we observed in Colby in irrigated site. Moving to Scotts Bluff, and Scotts Bluff, we had all 3 years good data set. This is to 2018. This is a Palmer amaranth biomass. You can see compared to non-treated check, all the programs reduced the Palmer amaranth biomass significantly, but there was not a whole lot of difference among the treatments. In terms of yield, no difference in yield, again in Scotts Bluff, just like in Hayes and Sydney and Colby. And here is a picture of non-treated weedy check from Scotts Bluff in 2018. And this is the products by itself, no Zidua treatment, just products applied pre. So again, I think some of the locations they had reduced the sunflower density to 50%, and we also had some changes in the rates. Some of the locations they had 21 ounce of products, and some location like Hayes and Colby we had 25 ounce of products. So there were a little bit changes here and there, but set of the treatments were similar among all the site in years. This is 2019 Scotts Bluff again. They had kochia, lamb's quarter, and Palmer. And you can see these are the Prowl-based program. This is non-treated and products-based and even spot and charge-based programs itself, or followed by Zidua treatments, were able to reduce the density of those 3 weed species compared to the non-treated check or even prowl-based programs. So Broad-X and Spot and Charge reduced total weeds compared to prowl, and Zidua reduced kochia density in prowl treatment. If you look at prowl itself, the kochia had more densities in prowl itself, but when you had a Zidua, it was able to reduce the kochia density. And Zidua reduced palmar amaranth density in Broad-X treatment as well when applied at 2 and 4 true leaf stage. Picture of non-treated weedy check in 2019 at Scotts Bluff. And this is a Broad-X 21 ounce, itself. And the site was hailed out twice, and Nemin was not able to collect any yield data. So there was no yield data available for 2019. 2020, he had a lamb's quarter and palmer amaranth, similar kind of trend what he saw in 2019. All Spartan-based or Broad-X-based programs were able to reduce the density of those lamb's quarter and palmer compared to non-treated weedy check and even prowl-based programs. However, palmer amaranth density was reduced in prowl treatments when Zidua was applied at 2 true leaf stage. You can see here that palmer amaranth bars is the green, in when you had a Zidua treatment at true leaf stage, significantly reduced the palmer amaranth density. Weed biomass, similar kind of trends. These Spartan-based or Spartan charge-based programs and Broad-X-based programs significantly reduced the weed biomass of those species and total weed biomass. However, no significant difference among the programs in terms of statistics. Here is a picture showing a non-treated weedy check in 2020. And this is the Broad-X by itself, looking a clean plot compared to non-treated weedy check. So in summary, in Colby 2018, no difference in palmer amaranth density among herbicide treatments and no difference in yield. Scotts Bluff 2018, 2019, and 2020, you can see Broad-X and Spartan charge outperformed compared to the prowl-based programs. And in 2019, Zidua did reduce the palmer amaranth density when Broad-X was applied, and kochia density when prowl was applied. So you can see the different kind of combination it's working for different species of kochia and palmer amaranth. For 2020, Broad-X and Spartan charge again outperformed prowl, and Zidua did reduce palmer amaranth density and biomass when prowl was applied. So overall conclusions, only the Scotts Bluff location had consistently high population of key weed species, and we were able to collect all 3 years of data. And then we found that Spartan charge and Broad-X were superior to prowl. We found differences between Spartan charge and Broad-X were little, but they were the best performing programs. But Zidua did reduce palmer amaranth densities in prowl treated plots. However, in dryland sites like Hayes, Sydney, and Julesburg, there were no substantial differences among treatment, as we mentioned earlier. And soil moisture did not appear to be a limiting factor of herbicide efficacy. So moving forward for the future weed control in sunflower, looking at the herbicide options do we have and tools we have, we need to think out of box in terms of weed control in sunflower. And as I mentioned about evolution of herbicide resistance or multiple resistance, kochia and palmer amaranth, herbicides are not going to be sustainable tools for sunflower or for any other crop. So we need to start thinking out of box, beyond herbicides, what we can do. And I think the best approach as a weed scientist I can think of is integrated weed management. How we can use different tools, different methods of weed control as an integrated approach controlling these resistant population. So my idea is to look at some of the aspects like integrating cover crops, fall planted as well as spring planted cover crops, in high plane production systems to see if we can combine these cover crops along with our standard pre-programs or burn down programs and have some residue on the ground, how that can help us controlling the early season palmer or kochia control in sunflower. The second aspect I'll be looking at is changing the agronomic practices and changing, maybe looking at the planting time, row spacing, or seeding rates. Some of the work probably has been done earlier, but like to check the agronomic practices, what we have been doing and what we can change in terms that can help crop than weed, and we can suppress those weeds under the crop. And then looking at some of the strategies managing weed escapes at harvest. I think you can see in this picture, this is probably a picture taken from one of the Spartan charge treatment. You can see palmer amaranth growing in the middle of those rows, and they're still producing a pretty good amount of seeds. So managing weed escapes or palmer amaranth escapes at that time is very, very critical. Although you can see like this is a 1 plant or 2 plant and probably will not be doing too much to the yield, but in terms of seed bank replenishment and for the future infestation, this is very, very important to remove those weed escapes at harvest. And I like to check, like to try some of the harvest weed seed control technologies in sunflower in this region, if that can fit into dryland sunflower productions to deplete the seed bank of these resistant palmer as well as kochia, if we can manage at the harvest. And then the fourth aspect, I'm going to look at the managing those palmer and kochia and rotational crops. We know in sunflower we cannot do a whole lot in terms of herbicides and other things, but we can certainly do a lot of things in rotational crops like wheat stubbles or even in wheat. Wheat is a highly competitive crop, and we have tools available. Why not we manage our weeds better in those rotational crops, and so that we don't have to struggle in sunflower. So those are some of my thoughts, and I really like to get some feedback from all of you and NSA folks that that can be used or that can be researched to really help the sunflower producer in the region. With that, I sincerely appreciate the financial support, both from National Sunflower Association and Kansas Sunflower Commission, supporting our project across those 3 states, and like to see the continued support to the program. Any questions you guys have? And you can reach to me through email, or you can follow me on Twitter account, and I'll be happy to answer the question if I can. Thank you.
Okay, if you guys have questions for Vipan, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question, or put it in the chat box. And as we get started here, while I'm not seeing a lot of things getting unmuted here, Vipan, I do have a question. When we were looking at the picture of the kochia and you were showing the post applications of atrazine versus some of the other products, is that something that what should we think about this? Because we have thought a lot about atrazine resistance in kochia. So is that surprising? Is there a fitness cost? Are we working our way out of it? What's going on with the atrazine portion of that?
That's a pretty good question, Jeannie. And atrazine has been around for several years, and we have been using in our system. And majority of the folks, they have been using as a pre-programs, a lot of crops, corn, sorghum, even in fallow ground, we have been using. And previous work in mid-90s, they have shown that the mutation which caused resistance to atrazine has a fitness penalty. And I think because after coming these Roundup ready crops and more use of Roundup, we were a little bit away from PS2 inhibitors and using more and more glyphosate and dicamba and other chemistries. And changing those selection pressure really help if you have a fitness penalty with those resistant traits. And I think that's what had happened over the last 20 years, 25 years, that we have been relying too much on Roundup, and that's where we are coming with Roundup resistance now. And over the last 10 years, I would say more and more reliance on dicamba and 2,4-D now. And we have started seeing some of the cases of dicamba resistance as well. So again, post-applied atrazine has not been used too much of it. It's more of a pre-applied atrazine. And that was surprising to me that that post-applied atrazine is working quite well in those dicamba-resistant kochia and glyphosate-resistant kochia. And I think that is a part of the deal, that we have changed our strategies the last 20 years, and the resistance trait or atrazine resistance trait has gone away due to the fitness penalty.
Great, thanks, Vipan. Yes, I figured there was fitness penalty involved with it, and so we could work our way out of it a little bit. So, okay. We have a couple other questions from Jason. What are some good ways to control kochia and mare's tail in the spring prior to planting, roughly 4 weeks or prior to planting time?
Of course, that's everybody like to see. And I think if I look at these crop phenologies, the sunflower or sorghum, these are some of the crops. If you look at it, we start planting like towards the end of May, early June. That's the time frame, right? The kochia, we have been struggling now, like end of February, early March, it will start coming. So we have quite a bit of a window there before crop planting. And I think that's where we need to use our burn down chemistries. And burn down chemistries, when I say for sorghum, it could be different, but for sunflower, it could be different. The things like dicamba could be a little complicated using before sunflower planting, because the label does not reveal too much about sunflower planting after dicamba application. So that's where I kind of focus or recommend folks using some of the contact type chemistries like Gramoxone. Gramoxone works pretty well on Roundup Ready kochia. And you can try now, some of the chemistries recently become available is a haloxifene or Alevor is also pretty good on kochia and mare's tail. Both of those can be used like 4 weeks before sunflower.
You said it was called Elevor?
Alevor, yes.
E-L-A-V-O-R?
E-L-E-V-O-R-E. And you can follow up on this book. Sarah has updated those, and Alevor is a new auxin haloxifene, and they have brought up Epixaro, which is another haloxifene-based premix. It has haloxifene and fluroxypyr, and that's a more label for wheat and sorghum burn down. But for sunflower, Alevor, which is just a haloxifene, can be used. But if you're struggling with the Roundup resistant kochia, and I would definitely ask you to go with Gramoxone. You can try Gramoxone as well.
Does Elevor have activity on mare's tail, or should we be thinking about something different for mare's tail?
Elevor has activity on mare's tail as well. Yes, it's a good product for both mare's tail and kochia.
Okay. A little follow-up to that they said they used Panther last year and wasn't so excited about the results.
Panther, yeah. When it was applied, does it say that in question?
Early.
Early, could be early spring, early fall, early.
I would guess early spring, because he was asking like 4 weeks ahead of planting on the previous comment. So.
Okay. Yeah, it depends.
Very, very small kochia.
Very, very small kochia, yes. Panther I like for kochia as a pre, then a post. If the kochia has emerged, I think that's gone. You really want to go ahead of kochia if you really want to see some effect on with the Panther. But if you look at the sunflower guide or the chemistries we have labeled for the sunflower, Panther is not in the list. I guess It's a little risky also. I would try to go with the Zidua as well, if you can combine Zidua with Panther, if you really want to see the good results on kochia. But again, those will work well on pre's, not on post kochia.
Great. Okay. Here's another question. I'm new to sunflower farming. Can you explain the express and the Clearfield traits? Before Vipan jumps in, I'll just tell you, make sure you know what you have before you spray.
Yes, that's very, very important, and it's becoming more and more challenging with working with those herbicide tolerant traits. This is a 2 herbicide tolerant sunflower traits. So Express is SU or sulfonylurea resistant sunflower, and Clearfield is EME tolerant sunflower. So these are both ALS inhibitors you can spray, but those are 2 different families. SU is sulfonylurea and Clearfield is EME imazamox based chemistries. So both are group 2s, but different families, and should not cross. You should not spray one on the other.
The other thing with those is we should probably be targeting smaller than larger weeds when we're going after them. If you see a flush of Palmer amaranth coming up, catch them when they're little, because you'll have better activity from both of those products at that stage.
Yes, and another thing to think about it, if you're really going after kochia or Palmer amaranth, most of our populations are resistant to these chemistries. And if you're really planning your sunflower production based on your kochia and Palmer amaranth infestation, these may not be the good strategy or good traits to go with.
I think many times we think about those as put them on the budget as a if we absolutely have to type of situation, but make sure you have a really good pre-program down and do not rely on both of those as a weed control option, but maybe something in case you need it as a rescue type of situation.
Yes, as I said, I think before sunflower planting, we have plenty of window to deplete the seed bank. We can let those kochia come, let those Palmer come and kill those with burn down chemistries, things like Gramaxone, contact type chemistries, and then plant sunflower so that you don't have to struggle those weed species in crop, because we don't have post-emergence options in sunflower.
Sunflower is definitely one of those start clean type
Stay
of
clean, right?
Yeah, start clean, stay clean.
Yes.
So. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Vipan? If you do, put them in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask. We'll give you just a couple of more seconds here to get that. I'll just also add, Vipan held up the K-State herbicide guide. And so we do have those available. Since we're not in person at the meeting to hand those out, if you would like a copy of that and haven't been able to get one, you can stop by your extension office. They do have them. And then if they don't happen to, or you're not there at the right time, send me an email and I'll put one in the mail to you so that you can get the K-State herbicide guide. Very user friendly, or work their way through. It's really a summary of herbicide labels, and then we have some other information in just discussing pre-emergence, post-emergence things that fit into specifically some of our systems in Western Kansas or Eastern Kansas. So just a really good resource. I keep one in both pickups and usually have one at our house too. Thanks, Jay. He put the link in there for the digital version of it, so you can download it and put it on your iPad and have it with you. So
sure. Yeah, she had updated some of the supplemental label like Anthem Flex. Those are the new ones for sunflower folks. And you can also see Authority Supreme and Authority Edge. Those are Zidua and Spartan-based premixes. Really good information you can take on from those, those recommendations for sunflower, because those are the standard programs, but those are the effective programs we have been seeing for our kochia and Palmer amaranth.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you, Vipan, for talking through weed control, because that is definitely one of the challenges with sunflower production, it seems like. So thanks for giving us some good steps to move us forward on that.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thanks for the invite. And let me know if there is any follow-up question, and I will be happy to answer.
Great. Yes. Yeah. You can, if anybody has follow-up questions, you can email me or email Vipan directly and we'll get them answered for you. So, all right. Thanks, Vipan.
Thank you.
Okay. So as we are finishing up here, I just want to thank everybody. Woo. Thank everybody for attending our webinar here today. We really appreciate your feedback. So I'm going to put a link in the chat box here, and that link is for you to go in and why is this not working as well as it should? I'll put the link in the chat box, and then if you guys would go in and fill that out, I would really appreciate it. It's not a very long evaluation. It's just a quick feedback on each of the sessions and just a little bit of demographic data on you. And we need that for some of our record keeping to report on the state and federal side of things. So just give us your gut instinct on what you learned today, what you liked about today, what you didn't like about today. And it shouldn't take very long to get that evaluation done. So with that, if you guys have any other questions, I saw that Dan O'Brien is still on here, Vipan is still on here, so we can keep them around for a few more minutes if you guys have more questions on anything that we've talked about. If you are getting CCA credits, please email me so I know that you are checking out for the day or checking out of the session. So thanks everybody for attending. I appreciate all your attention today. And with that, I think we're all set to go grow sunflowers now.